I think we are good. Nice. All right. Open things on up. Double check. Retro rewind. On update 2v2 tournament. Okay, so no new retro rewind updates. That's good, I think. Means I don't have to go through the trouble of like hitting the update button and waiting forever as my Wii U tries to do its thing. So I can just get into it. Very nice indeed. Let me make sure I have this up and ready. And also this. Or Trump is trying to make drug dealers death penalty. Yeah, that's you know, that's the thing. That's the thing that they're doing. But back by popular demand of absolutely no one, the Trump admin does plan to start another war on drugs. Because, you know, that worked so well the first time. You know, we had to do a sequel. It was so good, the people are asking for another one. And by the people, I mean absolutely nobody. So, no one has learned their lesson from the drug war? Well, people have learned their lesson from the drug war. Politicians haven't learned their lesson from the drug war. And corporations learned a very different lesson from the drug war. The entire reason that existed was to specifically disrupt minority communities and target the political opposition. It was a sort of veiled form of authoritarianism and anti-opposition, like anti-dissident crackdowns that the United States engaged in. And to that extent, it was actually very successful. People talk about how the war on drugs was an abject failure from the perspective of combating drug abuse and the preponderance of drugs in, you know, poor areas and whatnot. And it was a failure at doing that because it was never intended to combat drug use, drug abuse, and to like basically solve the drug problem. The intent of the drug war was not to actually address the issue of drugs. The intent of the drug war was to further segregate black people from white people in a post Civil Rights Act, post Voting Rights Act world. And in effect, they did this by segregating the poor from the wealthy. You'll notice poor people and wealthy people do drugs at roughly the same rates, but poor people are the only people that are ever prosecuted for it because the law only exists for the poor. That is the purpose of the drug war, and to that extent, it was massively successful. The internal stated purpose of the drug war was to basically sabotage the economic health of minority communities, break up their unions, break up their organizations, their like local movements, and arrest community leaders. And it was spectacularly successful at doing that. This is one of the reasons why I hate hierarchy. Oh yeah, hierarchy cultivates every like antisocial, anti-human tendency imaginable because it's all about that like relative profit. In this case, it's not even just relative profit in that sense because rich people actually benefited from that. You know, the 1980s and 90s, the most active periods of the drug war, saw massive consolidation of wealth at the top. Rich people were living it up. And the poors were getting their doors and teeth kicked in. You know, it was not a good time for most people. Oh my god! Okay. I'm alive somehow. Well, this guy thinks he's some hot shit in front of me on the standard bike there. Ah, the shock. Oh. Let's go up here. Please, I do not want to. I don't want to get in the part of the track where I'm just stuck with that guy the whole time. I'd rather not look at somebody whose name is just a racial slur. Here, I'm gonna start using this. You heard the people that like rich people because they think they'll be rich in the future. Yes, we even have a name for that. We call it the temporarily embarrassed millionaire or billionaire. You know, that's part of the reason, that's part of the way that manufacturing consent for rich people to have massive hordes of wealth has been successful, because they've successfully sort of subverted people's class identity by telling them, you're not poor or working class, you're just a millionaire who's temporarily out of luck. You know, you'll hit those big millions eventually, right? Like, there is a myth constructed around, oh, I'm poor now, like I don't have a lot of money now, but eventually I'm gonna make it big. I'm gonna have my millions, and I'll be rolling, you know, rolling with the big boys and the, you know, sort of rich socioeconomic circles. And because of that, there has been like there's an attitude of like veneration of the rich, if that makes sense, you know? It's like it's a part of the myth of meritocracy that if you have those millions, you deserve it. So all you need to do to get those millions is deserve it, you know? And a lot of people view themselves as deserving of those millions, so they think, I'm just temporarily embarrassed. All I got to do is pull myself up by my bootstraps. You know, clueless. But yeah, that's a really big thing. It was one of the main pillars of neoliberal economic narrative weaving. But it has lost its effectiveness with time. Because, you know, all of the data that we've had available to us, including all of the new data that we've discovered over the past and collected over the past several decades, has been like, no, that's not actually how it works. Having wealth is the biggest predictor of having wealth. Reminds me the free market is a paradox. It is. You have to have a state in order to have markets. Yeah, they're called the 1% for a reason, because there's only 1% of society that will ever live like that. You know? And in fact, the term rich or wealthy can only exist in opposition to poverty. Like, there has to be, in order for rich people to exist, there have to be comparatively much poorer people to compare them to, so that they can be called rich or wealthy, because those terms are relative. They have to have something that they are relative to, you know? Well, almost. Free market, the rich are free to rig it to their favor. Yeah, and that's like, the free market is kind of a meaningless euphemism, right? It like, doesn't really mean anything. Probably gonna get third. Oh, okay. It's also no excuse to hate poor people. Yes, it is. Yeah, and the other part of that attitude, where poor people don't view themselves as poor, but rather as temporarily embarrassed millionaires, is that cultivates like an attitude of despising your fellow worker, because you view yourself as a temporarily embarrassed millionaire, but another person who is just like you view as poor and undeserving. You know, that's the other side of that myth of meritocracy. If you are poor, then you deserve that because you are wretched and morally reprehensible or something. So it's a really, in the absence of all of that data shining through that we now have, in the absence of people having been disillusioned with that narrative, it is actually a very powerful narrative to undermine the class organizing power of the working class and to basically turn those efforts into something that would continue to reaffirm the position of the owning class. Being rich causes inflation by their existence. Yeah. You see in the UK, rich people who buy agricultural land to avoid inheritance tax convince a bunch of farmers that they will not have to pay the tax and cause a ruckus. I did not see that, but that isn't, like, unusual in the slightest for the kind of tactics that rich people will use to convince people that, like, I don't know, tax hikes on inheritance are bad or whatever. Labor introduced inheritance tax light. Cultural assets over £3 million. Ah, yeah, yeah. That's very consistent with the kind of fear mongering about taxes in America and in every country. Is that, you know, whenever we're talking about income tax or capital gains tax or inheritance tax or any kind of tax, what the conservatives and the wealthy very conveniently and usually intentionally leave out is the fact that the tax would only apply if you have more than 3 million, you know, in this case 3 million euros, or in the case of the United States, like several $1 million to your name. You know, you know, if you're the average farm worker, if you're the average barista, if you're the average service worker, none of these taxes will ever affect you in your life. Like, you have to, for some of the higher income tax brackets to be in effect, you have to be making in excess of $400,000 a year. That's more than 10 times the median income in the United States. You know? And that matters. From a perspective of policymaking, that matters. But then from a perspective of rhetoric, it's very easy for rich people to just leave out the part where, like, oh, yeah, like, this would affect you, person who's making 1/10 of the fucking amount beyond which this would kick in. And it feeds off of the narrative of the temporarily embarrassed millionaire. You know? And it's not like taxes would even start to be quote-unquote ruinous when you're at the 400,000 or even $1 to $2 million per year marker. The really massive inheritance taxes, the 90%, like the 80 to 100% inheritance and capital gains tax. Well, capital gains is, well, applied to everything because it's capital gains, and that's, you know, stock portfolios. But for inheritance tax and income tax, that shit starts to kick in when you reach $5 to $10 million per year, or an inheritance package of more than $10 million. Nobody fucking needs more than $10 million, right? $10 million is a lot of fucking money. And these are marginal taxes too, you know, which means that, like, the money under $10 million isn't taxed that much. You know, it's taxed at whatever the next lower amount is, right? But those are concepts that are too complicated to be effectively communicated by news media sound bites, and it's all too easy, again, for rich people to just weaponize extremely basic reactionary rhetoric about taxes, especially because rich people also own the news media. So often that's the narrative that gets promulgated, and people are left none the wiser on purpose. Yeah, there's very, very little material difference in lifestyle depending on whether you have $10 million to your name or $10 billion or $100 billion to your name. Like, you will be living in a very similar fashion. My volume was turned all the way up, so my YTK just screamed a lot of fucking money in my ears. Nice. You love to hear it, I think. Sorry if I hurt your eardrums. That's probably not good. Oh, I know where I want to use this bullet. And I'm in 6th, so nobody has the shock. Yeah, look at this. Musk could be taxed 99%, still get $5,000 stakes, whatever other rich shit he does. Yeah, he could, because, you know, beyond a certain point, you would be idly wealthy. There's a concept in economics and in history, in economic history called idle wealth. Basically, there's a point beyond which you have so much money that all of your assets simply appreciate over time and you get richer and richer and richer. And these are the people that own everything and dictate the discourse and like tell you that the government is going to tax you more money even though you're making $40,000 a year and they're making $40,000 a minute. Or in Jeff Bezos' case, $40,000 per second. Do you guys know that? Jeff Bezos is so wealthy, he makes $40,000 per second. He could start spending money right now, continuously spend money for the rest of his entire life, and it, like, his fortune, he literally would not be able to spend money at a rate that would make his fortune even decrease. He's earning money faster than it is humanly possible to spend money. That is what wealth consolidation does. And by the way, that's only the wealth that we know he has. There's so much wealth stored in offshore accounts. Even our like most modest and like reasonable estimations put the offshore wealth present in places, tax havens like the Seychelles and the Caymans and wherever else. It's estimated to be about 3 times of America's whole GDP, just offshore wealth. And that's only the shit that we know about. That's only the offshore wealth that we know exists. How much is the United States' GDP? Yeah, and then they'll say, like, Mexicans are causing inflation. USA GDP. USA GDP is $27 trillion as of 2023. 27 times 3, that's 51, let's see. That'd be about $52 trillion at least in offshore money that belongs to no known person in no known nation. Like, this is money that doesn't get taxed because it's not part of any set of, like, national borders or anything. $52 trillion. And they're telling you that it's Mexican people's fault. Are you kidding me? These people are literally the fucking Patriots from Metal Gear. You know how much power they have? Or I guess how much money they have? That doesn't always translate directly to raw power and whatnot, you know? Because sometimes you do find people that can't be bought. Hello, bro the boss. Not like they can ever spend the money being vaulted there. Ultimately, a lot of them just want to be God or something like that. They want to be God. They want to, like, it literally, there were, like, you know how in Metal Gear all the fucking villains were absurdly wealthy and had, like, private militaries at their command and had really weirdo motivations, like wanting to be God and transcend humanity and like create child slave battalions with disembodied brains piloting robots or whatever. Billionaires in real life are literally like that. They're not even as cool as Senator Armstrong. Senator Armstrong, like, is comparably more sympathetic of a figure and, like, more understandable of a figure than the fucking... I'm talking about, like, not even solid as Snake level. Like what's his name? The guy who you fight in Metal Gear Rising who has those 2, like, different phases with the barriers he puts in front of him. You know? The guy that was literally overseeing the farm of disembodied child brains or whatever. That's what billionaires are like. That's the kind of shit that they have behind closed doors. Not literally in the sense of, like, they've done surgery and extracted the brains of children or some shit like that. But they have 3 United States' worth of wealth just sitting around. And they're like, doing fuck all with it. Doesn't that villain say you can't defeat the status quo? Probably. I haven't played Metal Gear. I've seen playthroughs of Metal Gear. And Metal Gear, very large game series with a lot of very long games, so I'm hard-pressed to remember what every villain has said in those games. Starting to think being a billionaire causes brain damage, and you're right. It does. I've talked about this in other videos that, haven't gotten very much attention or whatever. Being a billionaire necessarily alienates you from humanity because humanity and the sort of human condition, the human experience and critical intelligence is something that has to be cultivated in a social context. What makes people smart, what makes people sociable is their presence in relation to other people, right? you have to interact with broader society and other people around you, and you have to have some kind of you have to have a social life and civic life to speak of in order to be intelligent, sociable, critically capable, and things like that. Being a billionaire, having that much wealth, insulates you from all of the consequences from your actions, and it insulates you from all possible criticism. Being a billionaire literally makes you of subhuman intelligence, because, like, oh, I don't like what this person is saying, let me just fucking hire a bunch of yes men, right? Like, you've seen, like, billionaires, doesn't matter if they were smart before they amassed a fortune of billions. Once they got their billions, they started being surrounded by yes men, and, like, more and more started to drift further and further away from anything that made them intelligent in the first place, because their money has started to do all the talking for them. Their money has started to do the work. Their money has started to do the decision making, and has started to basically insulate them from everything that makes a person capable of being human. Does that make sense? That's how you get shit like the Titan submersible, right? That happened because billionaires are fucking stupid, and they were insulated from all the consequences of their actions up until the point that it was literally thousands of atmospheres of pressure bearing down on them. No amount of money is going to convince the ocean not to kill you, but it can convince everybody on Earth not to kill you. Is it funny that being base is healthy for you? It is kind of funny, and I quite enjoy it, because I'm based relatively frequently, or so I like to think, anyway. Now we know why Musk keeps coming up with dumbass sci-fi concepts, thinking he can do it. Yeah, because he is trying to imagine that he's smart as a literally insecure reactionary mechanism of justifying why he has all of that wealth. But try as he might, he's not smart, and he can't be smart. So he just comes off as an idiot trying to pretend to be smart. And that's exactly what he is. Feel sorry for that child situation in the submarine. Well, he wasn't a kid, he was 19. I mean, I guess you could say kid, but he was an adult. But yeah, I feel bad either way, because he literally did not want to be there. His dad pressured him into doing it. And yeah, the billionaire that made the submarine, he, like, bypassed all of the pressure. Yeah, it's you know, unintended pun, but the billionaires that were that created the Ocean Gate submersible bypassed all of the advice of professionals around them, that you're not taking the proper safety precautions here, here, and here, that this is a bad idea. All they did was just not listen to them, because when you have that money, you can afford to just not listen to somebody. You can just say, yeah, fuck off, right? And what are they really going to do? What power do they have over you? You go and you do something stupid, and you're insulated from all the socioeconomic consequences of your actions. But when you're down in the ocean, you're dealing with physics, and you are not insulated from physics. And that's why the Titan submersible happens. Time to change the name of America to the United States of X. True. Yeah, first act of the Department of Government Efficiency. Elon Musk proposes a name change. United Broligarchy of Trump and Musk, Inc. I love the word broligarchy. Very, very cool. Thank you. You could say reality doesn't care about your feelings. You could say that. You could. You know? It just takes it takes a very, very long time for that reality to catch up to billionaires. You know? And life can get a whole lot worse before it does, right? That's why fascism is so destructive, because things have to get pretty bad before people really start panicking enough to instinctively just direct their anger towards whoever they know for absolute certain has power, and, you know, irrespective of whether or not they're using it, like, you know, has it. And everybody knows that rich people have power and that politicians have power. You know, you can fool people effectively. You can sell a lot of narratives driven by insecurity about Mexicans and immigrants and like the Jews or whoever it is. You can sell a lot of narratives about who's at fault for things, but at a certain point you can't escape being caught in that if you're that wealthy. You know, if life gets so abjectly bad and then you're still comparatively doing fine. Yeah, one of the greatest cons is billionaires telling us that government and regulatory entities are the enemy and not them. By the way, unrelated, but you were so right about this Social Democrats winning not mattering at all. I got blinded by their left-wing economic policy. Oh, did it not matter? Let me guess, the Social Democrats decided to be like, nah, just kidding. We're actually, you know, we think we'll go with this, you know, liberal proposal or whatever, compromise with the right or something. Social Democrats tend to do those things. Sorry, fellas. gotta get ahead a little bit here. People talk about the enemy within, or probably the actual enemy within. Yeah, it's all projection with fascists and those sorts of people. You hear what Biden did with the missiles? Yeah, the one like good thing he did to cap off his presidency is give Ukraine the ability to use long-range weapons inside of Russia. And the reason I say that that's a good thing is because under no circumstance do we want it. Yeah, it is a W. Under no circumstance do we want Russia to win this war, because now, like, Russia exclusively borders either countries that it puppets or countries that are part of NATO. And then also China, but it's China. Like, if Russia succeeds in exacting a lot of concessions from Ukraine, yeah, bomb the shit out of them, bomb their military infrastructure and shit like that. If Russia succeeds in taking a lot of land from Ukraine and eventually annexes them, because I guarantee Trump is probably going to allow him to do that, they're going to be on the border of, they're already on the border of the Baltic states. They're going to be on the border of Poland. And it's not that NATO wouldn't be able to defeat Russia in a military conflict. The problem is that such a military conflict would necessarily invoke Article 5, which would lead to an internecine World War III. Would it be nuclear? Probably not. I don't think that world leaders, including Putin, I think Putin is too rational of an actor at this stage. Even though he acts irrational plenty of times, I don't think he would actually push that button, as has been indicated by him threatening to push the button over and over again simply as a geopolitical tool, but then not doing it. They entered the coalition with the extreme far right. Now it's possible for the leader of the far right party, who posts anti-Semitic poems online, calls for protests outside the homes of ethnically Jewish MPs, to become the prime minister. Great, love that. Can't wait for Lithuania to have its own Weimar Republic moment, where the Social Democratic Party compromises with the nationalists and elects Lithuanian Hitler as the PM. A real Raptor, it's yeah, okay, but you get that. We live under a fascist planet. Yeah, it does seem like fascism increasingly is becoming the dominant ideology around the world, which is not good. People hate Biden even though he's trying to stop World War III. He's not trying terribly hard. I'll be real with that. You know, he is a neoliberal, which means that he's not very good at, like, broader systems level analysis, and that includes geopolitics. In fact, it especially means geopolitics. He's principally anti-Russia because of, well, a lot of the reasons that an American or a Western liberal would be anti-Russia, mostly having to do with, like, them being an old geopolitical enemy, and incidentally also having to do with fascist and expansionist tendencies. But, you know, we've seen the way that he's been willing to act with Israel, and how he's admitted that, like, yeah, we're just going to let Israel do their thing and commit a genocide against Palestinians, even if it means regional war with Iran. You know, like, he's not that committed to preventing war so much as he is to, like, defending our allies, or, you know, whatever that may mean to somebody like him. And I got it. Yeah, he's very status quo. Social Democrats have always been socially conservative, and expect them to enter into coalition with the dawn of the Communist Party, though. Well, you should expect them to do that, especially if the Social Democrats are socially conservative. That just means they're conservatives. You know, everything is social democracy, basically. Every party in Europe is, to varying degrees, a social democratic party. You know, because social democracy is essentially the promise. I think it's like, the best way I can put social democracy as an ideology is that it is sort of the promise of liberalism, that the state will sometimes favor the working class in that dialectic relationship and attempt to basically put its thumb on the scales of market economics such that society remains stable, right? Like, you know, through the construction of social programs and the use of the administrative state for things other than just the military, right? Social democracy was the ideology of the 20th and early 21st century. It could have been a very neoliberal vision of social democracy, but it was social democracy nonetheless. In fact, the Nazis back in the day viewed themselves as social democrats. Hitler posited that Nazism was a form of, as he put it, national social democracy. And you know, that, like, when you have people on the left being social democrats and people on the far right even being social democrats, I like, that kind of cements it for me that a lot of the modern landscape of politics is dictated by some of the basic premises of social democracy. Ah, very good item. Can't get over that clip about first time the far right won since the Nazis. Yeah, that's kind of a bombshell of a news item, even though I saw it coming for at least a little while. All right. Okay. Got through that section, that's good at least. Huh. One mushroom. That might be exactly what I need, or it could also be the death of me in a situation like this. Okay. A little bit sketchy, but that works out. Oh, okay. My wheelie didn't come out. I was real scared there. But I made it. Yeah, I globalized my agenda. I just saw that second message from earlier. There's a lot of anti-Semitism in Europe. What's your opinion on media where it says if you kill that person, you'll be just like them? Shit-ass media. Undeniably shit-ass media messaging. And it is very indicative of a liberal bias in any such media that engages in that talking point. Because the dynamic there that you're describing, hero and villain, and the hero's like, oh, if I kill you, I'll be no better than you. Meanwhile, the villain is known for killing fucking tens of thousands or millions of people. Shoot the motherfucker, right? Like, you know, and this has been historically borne out that this is like what you're supposed to do in that situation. It's like, dog, this guy's an evil dictator that murdered millions. Kill his ass. That's exactly the thing that the Allies did after the Second World War, where these Nazi war criminals were put on trial And effectively, the Nazis were arguing, if you kill us, you're no better than we are. And it fucking worked. Because then Operation Paperclip happened. This is the argument that fascists use against liberals every time, and it works every single time. And it's why liberals will never be an effective fighting force against fascists. You know, fascists will kill millions and then be like, oh, liberals, if you kill me, in parentheses, one person who has killed millions, then you're actually no better than I am. Like, fucking no, actually. That's not how that works. Yeah, like, if you kill us, you're just as bad as us. Oh, yeah, I guess killing you makes me the same as the guys that murdered 20 million people. That's so true. Like, killing one person is definitely just as bad as killing 20 million people. Like, fuck off. I hate that. I hate that line of reasoning so much. If the Allies got to the Mustache Man first, do you think they would have killed him? No shot. Not even remotely. Like, seriously, I think that Hitler killing himself was the good ending, because if he was captured alive, they wouldn't have killed him. They probably would have. I genuinely don't think they would have. They hanged some of the Nazis, like, who was it? Himmler? There were some of the Nazi leadership that were hanged, but I really do not think they would have killed Hitler. Remember, Hitler was still popular with the Germans after World War II had finished, right? Like, it was only as a result of the Nuremberg trials that the Nazis even became unpopular in Germany. You know? People still approved of Hitler in Germany right up to the point where the Nuremberg trials were happening. And even, like, 10 years after that, a full third of Germans were saying, like, yeah, Hitler gets a bad rap. I genuinely don't think the Allies would have killed Hitler if they had the chance. He was not popular in Allied countries. Yeah, but I don't think that matters. I genuinely don't think that matters as much. Look, and this is not one of my, like, most hardline positions, I guess. Like, this is all speculation because, you know, this is an alternate reality where Hitler didn't take his own life, but, like, still. Yeah, you know, the Italian communists were the ones that killed Mussolini. You know, I genuinely, I don't think the liberals would have killed Mussolini. That's for damn sure. For proof of this argument, Donald Trump lives? Yeah. Yeah. Although, you know, Hitler, the only thing that would have led to Hitler facing any consequences whatsoever is that he was an enemy of the Allies in wartime. A lot of the Allied countries didn't give two shits about the genocide against Jewish people. Hell, like, I think people often forget just how anti-Semitic Europe was leading up to World War II, and America as well. The only reason Nazism went quiet in a lot of those countries is because that ideology was representative of a separate country that they were at war with. Authoritarianism is just popular? Not necessarily. Authoritarianism is not necessarily very popular with people. In fact, in a vacuum, it's not all that popular. The problem is the only alternative that has been, like, cemented in people's minds to an authoritarian government is neoliberalism. You know, when people think democracy, they think bourgeois liberal democracy, which means that the only two possibilities in their mind are liberalism and fascism, and because socialism has been systemically shut out of the discourse. Authoritarianism is not something that people will, like, gleefully support. Not on its own. There has to be so many other moving parts to even make authoritarianism palatable. Like, the bulk of the work of making fascism palatable has been done by liberals who claim to represent the opposite of it. You know? When in reality, they don't actually represent the opposite of it. Are you with actual monarchists before? Monarchism is a joke ideology. It either falls under fascism or liberalism. You know, monarchism ceased to be a real ideology when feudalism stopped being the main socio-political mode of organization in the world. So often overlooked that the German communists were almost as popular as the Nazis before they abolished fair elections. Yeah, a lot of people, you know, don't, you know this stuff. You're not taught about this stuff in history class. You're not taught about the massive ideological conflicts that were going on in Germany leading up to the Nazi takeover, and how much help the Nazis had from the liberals who are more concerned about, like, the Red Menace or whatever. You know, effectively, the Nazis built a coalition by appealing to the reactionism in a lot of liberals in Germany, you know? Ideological conflicts happened all over Europe. Oh, yeah. I'm silly. Mushroom. Sometimes feels like we got lucky the Enlightenment happened. Well, fascism is a product of the Enlightenment. So, both lucky and unlucky, right? Fascism is a post-liberal ideology. Fascism only exists in a world where liberalism exists. You can have political reactionism in a world without liberalism, but liberalism is the parent ideology of fascism. You know, so fascism is a product of that Enlightenment that also gave us liberalism. And that gave us modern socialism as well. All three of the main ideologies in politics right now are functionally products of the Enlightenment. We had our own Nazis for a while, Oswald Mosley and the like. Yeah. His descendants are still rich nobles. Yeah, in countries that have had fewer revolutions, countries like Britain, where the transition from feudalism and capitalism happened almost entirely without a violent revolution from below, the ruling class stayed the same. Their relationship to, their relationship to the economic structure simply slightly changed. You know, the aristocrats and feudal nobility of Britain became the aristocrats that owned large factories and land estates, you know? Essentially, the merchants and the aristocrats became one and the same. And, you know, the peasants and the workers were still the peasants and the workers. There was just a different system of distributing goods and services as time moved on. But yeah. I think that Batman is Aaron and liberal simultaneously. I don't know what Aaron is autocorrecting from. I feel like some people don't know the cops were a recent point in history that they were invented. Yeah, the cops are a very recent phenomenon. And in fact, they were preceded by, like, the invention of police, like the night patrol, is only as recent as about the 1600s. You know? Before the 1600s, society existed completely without police officers or police departments. You had like a town guard that, like, guarded the gate. You had, like, the palace guard that was straightforwardly just the people that guarded the king, you know, the king's own personal, like, set of armed men, and you had the military. Date to 1830s. In the United States, yes, the cops date to about the 1830s when they were the slave patrols. In the United States, the institution of policing originates with slave patrols who would basically, patrol in free states, but also slave states, mostly free states, to basically black bag random black people and traffic them to the South where they would be enslaved. No. was like schools explain more where cops came from than the so American police descend from slave bashers. That explains a lot. Yeah, and to an extent, all police do. The night patrols and like police in every country do not serve a social function. Not for the masses of the country, right? Police exists to crack the skulls of minorities, break up protests, and disrupt union organizing. Those are the three things that police do. Anything else is purely extraneous to having a police department. Any social function that the police occasionally dabble in, you will find them doing so very incompetently. But even if they're doing something good, that is not in any way necessary to the existence of a police department. You don't need that for policing, and you don't need policing for that. Does that make sense? Don't they have certain rules they pretend to have to look less biased? Yes, that has been one of the biggest legitimizing forces of police departments the world round, is the appearance of having rules, even though the people who are in charge of enforcing those rules are the police. So they can simply choose not to enforce any rules that are inconvenient to them, or to enforce a rule that doesn't actually exist. Like I said, the police are inconsistent with how they enforce the law all the time, but their behavior becomes a lot more consistent when you understand that they're not there to enforce any set of rules necessarily, but rather to protect the interests of the propertied classes against the masses of the propertyless. And that means broken windows policing, disrupting immigrant communities, disrupting minority communities and poor communities, and protecting rich people from whatever, right? They are the instrument of the law that protects rich people without binding them, and they are also the instrument of the law that binds poor people without protecting them. Police began in 1867, 2 years after the banning of books written in our language. I wonder if there's a correlation there. We conducted an investigation and decided we did nothing wrong. The classic. The police department and IDF classic. But anyways, after this race, there were a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. And then there was a video that I wanted to react to. That somebody in chat, I believe it was maybe Gotron, somebody suggested about MatPat. So I'll try to get through those as I can. And then I'll probably end the stream once I'm done with those things. Because I got my flu shot yesterday. I got my COVID shot last Monday. And got my flu shot yesterday, so I'm quite tired. Alright, and I'm really far behind here. Let me try to get an item so I can maybe make some headway. Game Theory predicting the election in 2016. I found it, actually. I found the video I think you were talking about. It is from early 2016, and it's about Trump, like, using reality TV to win or something. I don't know. And get everybody after the boxes here. There we go. Oh, yeah. Excuse me. Oh, I'm not going to pass anybody. Unfortunate. Alright. But before I even get to that video, what was I going to talk about? Ah, yes. MatPat was a beast person, in my opinion. I'll miss him. I'm gonna miss him too, for his memetic value to the whole internet, and also because he's a really smart guy. I think the internet benefited a lot from him being around. But that's his decision, and I totally respect if he wants to, like, step away. He will have a great legacy. Oh, yeah, 100%. We meme on him for how ridiculous some of his theories sounded. but he's gonna have a fucking legacy behind him. Anyways, before I get to that, I'm gonna take a look at now Bluesky, which has surpassed Twitter in activity and active users. A lot of major news orgs have migrated over to Bluesky from Twitter. I've moved mostly over to Bluesky from Twitter. My representatives and senators have moved over to Bluesky rather than Twitter. It's a hip and happening time over there. I hate myself for saying those words in that order. I do actually have a link for my Bluesky. If I type in chat, well, I can't. If you type !Bluesky, you'll get a link to my Bluesky profile, and you can follow me over there if you so wish. I don't have either 100% less brain rot. That is true. However, my job is the politics brain rot, so on Bluesky I shall be. But yeah, a lot of news orgs and politicians and whatever have already moved over to Bluesky. There are some that are still on Twitter. In fact, I think that, all of them still have their Twitter accounts and whatnot. But post-election, people really started deactivating their Twitter accounts in pretty large numbers. And, a lot of people started moving over to Bluesky. To such an extent that Twitter has become a shell, even of what it used to be in the, Nazi-infested era. There are less and less people on Twitter that aren't Nazis. And in fact, Bluesky has very early on cultivated an identity of being the not far-right social media website, There's a very, for the time being, I don't know if this will last, but there is a pretty pronounced hegemony of left-leaning sentiment, opinions, and accounts over there, as opposed to very right-leaning sentiments, opinions, and accounts. Because, well, right-leaning people are fucking stupid and really only care about triggering the libs and, Pepe posting about the Jews, right? All of which violate the terms of service of any social media website, but they'll consistently get banned from Bluesky from engaging in this behavior, and they will actually get blocked as well by a lot of people with a block function that hasn't totally been neutered. Twitter, one of the most recent changes that Twitter made was to effectively neuter the block function so that, people that you blocked can still see your shit and conduct harassment campaigns against you. It's one of the one of those in-shitification things that very conveniently benefits a lot of Nazis and not a whole lot of anybody else. Himowoski, thank you very much for the follow. Just saw that. And I see as well, Jason Russell 666 followed a little while ago. Thank you very much to them. I haven't been streaming the past couple of days, so. There are way more cat pics on Bluesky. There are more cat pics on Bluesky. There are also more pussy pics on Bluesky. Bluesky has actually made it very clear that they will be friendly to sex workers being on the platform, which Twitter a little while ago decided to purge a lot of sex workers and pornographic content from the platform. And while obviously not everybody's going to be interested in sex workers and whatnot, sex workers often rely on social media platforms to make a living and to market themselves and stuff like that. And it's a much more ethical living than being involved directly with the industry of pornography. So that's nice. And if you can't tell, there are a couple people that I follow that are sex workers or erotic artists, and I want to see them do well because they're living their best life. I can still watch my gay furry artists. That's the spirit. But now that I've rattled off some of the stuff that is leading to Bluesky kind of overtaking Twitter, I wanted to talk a little bit about some things that I've seen over there. And what I've seen over there is liberal media outlets getting absolutely torn to shreds from the left by masses upon masses of people, including politicians, by the way. AOC, Ilhan Omar, many members of the what's called the Justice Democrats, that's basically the populist left faction of the Democratic Party in America, have been absolutely going in on news outlets for doubling down on their reactionism and sort of preemptively bending the knee to the incoming Trump administration. You know, it's much more on that subject of liberalism being the moderate wing of fascism, and news outlets being controlled by the wealthy being some of the first to capitulate. No news outlet, it seems, is safe from this. I don't have a great opportunity to showcase this right now, but once the race is done, I'll have a look at some of the specific examples of news outlets that are coddling Trump's balls, as Secular Talk, you know, Kyle Kalinske would like to put it. Man after my own heart. You know, suffice it to say, it doesn't inspire confidence in their reader base, their viewer base, or the general public at large. Opinions on RFK Jr. being the health secretary. Two things. Number one, we're all fucked. Number two, it is extremely funny. And number three, it was also really funny that Trump forced him to eat a Big Mac. Because he looked like he was visibly in pain. To be fair, the worm died, so he probably knows about health treatments. Well, his brain didn't grow back, so I don't think he does, actually. It feels like the White House is turning... Feels like the White House is turning into the Office TV show. It is a little bit like that. A little bit. Fitting with the themes of reality TV and whatnot. Heard measles was planning a comeback. Yeah, measles. We got some cases of the bird flu going around as well. But let's find some examples of liberal media bending the knee to fascism as they are wont to do, shoving out progressives even further and dropping the mask on where their allegiances lie. That is to say, to the owning class that consolidated behind Trump. Here we have Joe Scarborough. MSNBC Morning Joe hosts Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski meeting with Trump in bid for, quote, new approach to coverage. And by new approach, they mean they're going to coddle Trump's nuts even more. They went to Mar-a-Lago over the weekend, where they agreed to restart communications with the president-elect. So that's MSNBC and Joe Scarborough, who used to be a Republican congressman, by the way, bending the knee. Then we have Washington Post. The Washington Post is holding their... This is from Midas Touch reporting on this. Washington Post Live 2024 Global Women's Summit. Featured guests Laura Trump and Kellyanne Conway, aka Trump's, I think, daughter or daughter-in-law, and Kellyanne Conway, former spokesperson for the Trump administration. We're so feminist, we're going to have our women's event be hosted and you know, discussed by two of the most fucking reviled women on earth who hate other women and want to take all of their rights away. Great, you know, thank you, very cool. And then I believe there was also a bit from NPR. If I find a good opportunity, I may be able to scroll further down to highlight that. And the New York Times as well, I believe. NPR, New York Times, Washington Post, MSNBC, like, it's basically every news outlet of note is going this route of appeasing the fascists and just becoming fascists. An example of what I was talking about when I mentioned that not only does liberalism sort of give birth to fascism as a child ideology, but it literally itself becomes fascism. Yeah, we're so girl boss and inclusive that we support fascist women. Truly a tale of, you know, liberal inclusion politics and whatnot. It's literally like the tolerance paradox, but they're gleefully engaging in it, knowing exactly where it will lead. I'm going to start using these here. I'm pretty far behind. Okay, by that, that's fine. Oh, that guy back there definitely, like, nobody else is getting the shock, I don't think. Holy shit, that was a close call. Don't get hit by that. And 5th place, maybe? Yeah. Time for Shetler. Oh, yeah. Sheetler. Whitler. White Woman Hitler. Here we go. Where's the next one? Ah, here's The Atlantic. Is wokeness one big power grab? This is a, I believe this is a ideas piece. This is like a column bit. Behind much of social justice discourse is self-interested struggle for power. Typical of the of liberals becoming fascist, they also simply project everything that they view to be bad onto their opponents when being guilty of it themselves. A lot of this is a revelation that a lot of these supposedly left-leaning or liberal news media outlets didn't actually have any beliefs and were just self-interested and interested in like cultivating, maintaining their status. That's The Atlantic. Oh, also Politico. New Politico.com story from Rhode Island's Democrat committeeman Joe Paulino. The progressive wing of the party has to recognize, we all have to recognize, the country's not progressive and not to the far left or the far right. They're in the middle. Dutch center party moment. You know, not far left but far right, but a secret third thing. Far right. Yeah, Meloni wins Italian election. It's about time we had a woman fascist in the president's office or PM office. Nice. I swear if anybody says America's in the middle, I'm going to smash a table. Well, Rhode Island Democratic politician said that, so I guess it's time to smash that table. Then here we go. Now from NPR. In a bit of like, I can't believe I'm saying this because it's not even remotely subtle, comparatively more subtle, pivoting to the right. We have an NPR headline that reads, RFK Jr. wants to tackle chronic disease. Despite controversial views on vaccines, his focus on healthy food and taking on special interests may find broad support and face political headwinds. Which is basically them whitewashing his image because his quote-unquote controversial opinion on vaccines is that they are a conspiracy by the Jews to target people with Russian DNA and kill us all or something. Literally, he has said those, like, that talking point. Sounds like a Goebbels propaganda bit. Well, it's fitting because RFK Jr. is a massive anti-Semite and also a conspiracist and wants to deregulate massive sections of the agricultural economy, the agricultural sector. Feel like they're trying to get the worst possible thing to happen. Talking about Republicans here. Yeah, that's, you know, that's the name of the game for Republicans is we want bad things to happen, you know? But you know, the biggest thing about RFK Jr.'s tenure is that it is more than likely to be filled with, like, gross incompetence and negligence, and is going to lead to horrifically bad outcomes, right? And NPR is phrasing it as, wow, look at this controversial maverick ready to make America healthy again by banning vaccines and, like, sending us back to the fucking 19th century where child mortality was 1 in 3 or some shit, you know? They conveniently leave that part out. Have you ever heard the meme where a child thinks politics is black and white and teenager thinks it's gray and adult thinks it's black and white? Yes, I have heard that meme. It's called informed simplicity. When you're a kid, you learn about things in terms of simply good and bad. When you become a little bit more knowledgeable and sophomoric, you know, as a teenager or young adult, you start trying to engage in the stupid man's philosophy that, oh, everything is shades of gray and pure good and pure evil are very rare if they exist at all. But then as an adult, hopefully having completed the cycle, you learn that in the state of the world, there are some people that are actually just evil and there are ideologies that are actually just evil. and hateful and spiteful. And there are some ideologies in people that are just good and want good things, and there are people that want bad things for purely self-interested reasons. You know, there is just good and bad. And there are shades of gray. Those shades of gray mostly exist as really stupid people with really inconsistent and incomprehensible belief systems. And that's fine. We've all had that arc. Yeah, I think, you know, many people have a version of that arc. You know? You seen those memes making fun of the current Secretary of Health for being overweight to push RFK is a good pick? Yes, I have. And it is actually very indicative of the fascists' tendency to rely solely on aesthetics in their value system. Because RFK Jr. is not healthy. The pictures that I have seen of him, or maybe he is healthy, but he doesn't look very healthy to me. You know, they pick out pictures of him that are like muscular and stuff, but he's red as a fucking beet. Like, that man's gonna have skin cancer or something, if that's what I think it is. You know, like, if you're getting sunburned to the point that you're red, like, motherfucker, your health is on the line. And of course, also the fact that RFK Jr. has had a brainworm literally eat a part of his brain and is medically stupid. And meanwhile, the current Secretary of Health, while she is, I don't know, overweight, is a medical doctor and is an expert in the field of health and understands what makes for good health policy to basically cultivate a healthy population at large, you know? It's like, oh, who's a better pick for the Department of Science? Person who's actually a scientist, or really swole, muscular, handsome-looking guy who's actually a retard? Checkmate, liberals. It's just that. That was probably him sweating. I didn't see sweat. I think he was just sunburned as fuck, man. You know? But yes, now, you know, now we've done that little escapade discussing the, you know, RFK Jr. and the little creature that lived in his head for a little while and likely starved from how little brain there was initially, and you know, definitely died from there not being any left. I want to return back to the initial thing that I wanted to mention, which is that, you know, true to the mantra that liberalism is the moderate wing of fascism, or in some of my phrasings, that fascism is the extremist wing of liberalism. The liberal news media post-election have realized that there is writing on the wall that Trump is going to persecute his political opposition, including media outlets, and rather than try to contend with that in any meaningful way, because that would require, like, abandoning the owning class to an extent, news media outlets such as NPR, Politico, fucking The Atlantic, you know, the New York Times, the Washington Post, all of those sorts of media outlets have simply decided to abandon any semblance of, like, reasonable left-wing prescription that they may have had, and just acquiesce to fascism, because they have no real values beyond that which serves their bottom line, that which serves the shareholders and the board and the owning class that makes the decisions for them, or that, you know, ultimately drives the decision-making process. But yeah, you know, ultimately, just to wrap it up, I mainly wanted to highlight, you know, news media to make the example of scratch a liberal and a fascist bleeds, etc., etc. You guys know the story. Liberalism in crisis retreats into reactionism as a product of the owning class, etc., etc. And now we're going to have to contend with that over the next several years as news outlets all effectively just become Fox News or the Daily Mail or some bullshit right-wing rag to you know, coddle Trump's balls. Again, shout outs to Kyle Kalinske from Secular Talk, and I will, I'll just say, cut the segment there if that becomes a segment. Whoa. Man, looks like a Jew. You really trust him, really? Yeah, it's just that. It's just like, oh, that guy looks Jewish. You want him running your government? And like, fucking, you know. It's like, oh, this guy looks like a Jew. You know, he's running the Department of Health and Human Services, literally the foremost expert on medical science in all of Germany. Like, we should have this strong Aryan running the Department of Health and Human Services. Look how healthy he is. Fucking has syphilis and it, like, dropped out of high school. Or, you know, it's purely aesthetics. Holy shit, you almost got me with that green shell. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised if school started teaching the JQ. Yeah, don't count on that. Like, public schools are actually not, they are not managed at the federal level, right? Education spending, in large part, is managed at the federal level, but that's spending. The federal government doesn't have that much say over what states and localities have in their curriculums. So places where you would expect them to teach the Jewish question before are going to stay the same, mostly. Areas that you would not expect to teach the Jewish question in school are going to stay probably mostly the same. The thing that's going to change is that education funding is going to be absolutely hollowed out beyond recognition, right? Like, after a Trump term, it's highly unlikely that we still have a public school system at all. You know, that one of the expressly stated aims of the Republican Party consistently is that they want to get rid of the Department of Education, and basically have all schooling be done either as homeschooling or private schooling, you know? So public schools are under the knife, but mostly from a power of the purse perspective, not necessarily, although still somewhat, from like an ideological compliance perspective. Does that make sense? You think the U.S. fairly decentralized structure will actually be a considerable barrier to Putinism taking hold, as the blue states can fight back to some extent? Possibly. You know, the blue states are definitely going to be better than red states because they are going to put up more of a fuss when the Republicans try to do some fascist shit. But I don't think it's not going to be like it's not going to be the absolute biggest barrier in the world, you know? That is a factor, but it's not going to save us. Blue is superior color? Agree to disagree. You may notice the amount of red in my UI, in my webcam border, and also in my username if I ever post in chat. I like the color red. Blue is usually the color of the right wing, funnily enough. It's only in America that those colors are inverted, I think. Where blue is the color of the left, and red is the color of the right. Usually it's the other way around. You know, think about it. Communism, socialism, red. And I mean, the Nazis were brown, which is appropriate because that's shit-ass diarrhea color. But, you know, it's the party swap that the Republicans refuse to admit. No, funnily enough, it actually isn't. The Democratic Party, even post-switch, was represented by red. You can go back to the 1970s and 80s, post-Civil Rights Act and post-party switch, and look at electoral maps. For example, the one I'm thinking of was the map of Reagan's electoral victory in either 1980 or 1984. The Republicans were represented by blue. The Conservative Party represented by blue. And the Democrats were red. Because the Democrats were, I guess, viewed as similar to, like, the Labour Party in the UK or, you know, the Social Democrats in France or whoever. I don't know what caused it to change, but it was sometime between the 80s and 90s, i.e. after the party switch had already happened, that the Democrats switched from red to blue and the Republicans from blue to red. For a little while, there was in the United States that same trend of, yeah, the left-wing party is in red and the right-wing party is in blue. Like, legitimately, I don't know what caused that to change. Yeah, everywhere else, the right wing is generally blue. You know, the Tories in the UK, the Conservatives in Canada, the, you know, far right in Germany and in France, you know. And same thing with, like, comparatively left-leaning parties being red or I guess green. I wish I had a school lesson about the party swap. I kind of wish that they taught that too, but here's the thing that's kind of fucked up about the American school system is they have to be quote-unquote apolitical, which means they can't talk about anything that's more recent than, like, 1960. Vitor Benedetti, welcome back. I'm doing quite well today, if a little bit tired, because I recently got my flu shot. Ooh. Shock. Yeah. In school, I think I remember... I at least learned that the party switch existed, but they were very careful not to detail what ideologies the parties had before or after. They had to, funnily enough, they had to zoom in to such a specific level that they could delude the class into thinking that neither party had a consistent ideology. Which, I mean, to a certain extent, there is something to be mentioned there that the party switch was not an instantaneous thing. It took time. So you saw a gradual ideological muddling and then a resettling. But, you know, it was pretty clear they didn't really want to explain it. Party swap happening during FDR's era. Yeah, more or less. I think that the party swap happened like I said, it was a process. It finished right around the time that the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Act were being passed, because that was mostly the Democratic Party. At that point, it had finished. FDR, at FDR's time, there were still a pretty large faction of conservatives in the Democratic Party that were more conservative than a lot of people in the Republican Party, if that makes sense. Up until through the early 20th century, the Republicans were the party of like representation of racial minorities. But it was during and after the FDR years that party even started to change. And especially, I think already before that, the party tendencies towards class had sort of changed, where the Republicans previously were a social democratic party, but had liberalized going into the 20th century and become more of a fiscally conservative, laissez-faire party, and the Democrats leaned into social democracy, And now we're seeing sort of a one-way party switch, where the Democrats are moving more to the right, but the Republicans are, in turn, moving to the left. Yeah, it was in the 60s and 70s that Dixiecrats really started jumping ship to the Republican Party. Imagine if another country looked at our political map and said, oh, this country is communist. Well, if that were the case, they would be making the same mistake that most conservatives do, which is that land doesn't vote. People do. Kind of like how you can see a map of the electoral regions of France, and you'll see a lot of blue for the far right, but a lot of those blue areas are like really rural and not populated. Tomorrow's a holiday in Brazil. We will have Black Consciousness Day holiday nationally for the first time. Congratulations! Hope you enjoy it. That sounds like fun. Shock. Now a tiny bitch. I forgot what you're planning to do next. I'm gonna take a look at that after this race is done. I kind of can't look at much stuff. I can't always I usually can't look at stuff on like my list of things to do while I'm in the race, because I have to concentrate to a degree on driving. I mean, you guys have seen how that's worked out in this race, i.e. it kind of hasn't, but, And that shock isn't going to save me. What's up, Smurf? Something about meme theory. Yeah, I got 3 comboed. I got Mario Karted at the end. 20,000 exactly. Now I gotta put my head in the game. Okay. Who is ready for React content? I need to take my sweatshirt off for this because it's actually kind of warm. I'm sweating a little bit. Alright. You guys know what time it is. It's about time for, let's see. Oop. It's about time for some of this and some of this. Right? Actually, no, I need to bring that down a little bit. Come on. It keeps snapping when I don't want it to. Fuck, whatever. You go up there. Yay, trans colors? Yeah. This is my trans rights t-shirt. Okay. Where's the React Andy window? It's down there. Shit, I'm not going to be able to do this for this race. Oh well. You guys will just have to deal with the fact that my webcam is now up in the top right rather than the bottom right for a short Mario Circuit 3 race. I wanted to react to the video about MatPat where he predicted the first, in a way, I guess, you know, predicted the first victory of Donald Trump back in 2016. I want to see what he said about the issue, because if you guys remember, the last time I watched a MatPat thing, which was also the first time I watched a MatPat thing on stream, was his video about how YouTube broke your brain. And it was supposed to be about, like, you know, it was about YouTube. It was about media culture online and how that was different from the sort of cable TV era that came before. But ultimately, it had a lot of relevant things to say about social alienation and late-stage capitalism as an environment of media consumption and highly tailored, individualized, marketized content that effectively separated everybody from one another and caused people to become so lonely and isolated that they took to very desperate measures and reactionary measures just to feel a sense of community and togetherness again, which is how you get a lot of the far-right pipeline. And I was genuinely blown away by, like, you know, the degree of analysis that was present in that video, you know, like, you know, legitimately, I think I had sort of, you know, I gotta apologize to MatPat. You know, I wasn't familiar with your game. You know, I initially had thought that he was just kind of the funny meme game theory man. But no, he's got a big old hunk of gray matter ticking away in there, and he's got some shit to say. So, why don't we take a look at that? Film theory. How big is this? This needs to be a little bit bigger. There we go. Let's make it about the size of my webcam. And let's take a look.
Quick, who's the first presidential candidate you think of this year? Yep.
Bernie Sanders, baby. Okay, so this was, by the way, this came out in February of 2016, which I believe was actually before the primary elections for the, I guess the Republicans, or it was before somebody's primary, or at least very soon afterwards. Because you still have people like Ted Cruz and Chris Christie in this picture. You think the government will go after MatPat? Do you think he's safe? I think he's safe. Insofar as his presence as a media figure.
Talking about him.
Wow. Let me know, by the way.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Film.
Is the video, like, loud enough that it's overpowering my voice? I don't have a great way of checking that in real time. If not, then I can continue. But if it's loud enough that, like, you have a hard time hearing my voice over the video, then I might need to readjust that. I think it's fine? Okay. Well, then let's continue.
Now fortified with 150% of your daily dose of knowledge. Now producing this show forces me to stay pretty darn up to date with my TV viewing. It takes me to all sorts of programming, from killing zombies to rose ceremonies to yelling at people who have no idea how bidding works. Come on, people! When you're the last person to bid on The Price is Right,
back when the
$1 is the
back when the fucking The Walking Dead was still relevant, huh? Seems fine? Okay, thank you. That's good.
Best option. It's called playing the odds. But lately, there's been something interrupting my nightly dose of Modern Family. The election. But not just the election. One man in particular.
Donald Trump.
Mr. Trump. Donald Trump. Donald Trump. Donald Trump. Donald Trump. Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump
is everywhere. And sure, when you're on the short list of people who could be the next
this was
of the United States, you should plan to get some media exposure. But
this is true. This was true for the 2024 cycle as well as the 2016 cycle. And I guarantee MatPat is going to hammer away on like how that is helping or helped him win. Is that the media outlets couldn't fucking take the cameras off him. He was everywhere. They loved him. You know? They may have pretended that they hated his boorishness and whatever, but, like, he was a content farm for all these motherfuckers.
it seems like every election story has been about him, and he's just one candidate out of about 300 who entered. For someone who's never held public office
That's
before,
true.
he's doing really well. His candidacy started as
2016 was a
a
really big primary season.
But as of the writing of this episode, he just won the New Hampshire primaries, which is good since I've been working on this episode for a while now, and if he suddenly tanked, all this work would have been wasted. But this whole time...
okay, so this was in the midst of the Republican primaries. Interesting.
As much as the next guy, but why would people want a real estate tycoon to be president? How does someone with no experience dominate a race full of veteran politicians? I mean, before this past
you guys already know my answer to this, but let's see what Matt had.
Public about this guy was his hair. Seriously, is that a toupee or not? So I've been following what
it's a comb over.
Trump has been doing, and I was surprised by what I found. Trump's campaign
What?
tactics are unusual, but I've seen
He breathed fire?
them before, not from politicians, but from reality TV contestants. Donald Trump knows how TV
Celebrity
works,
Apprentice.
especially reality TV, and he knows what kind of players are the most likely to survive
He fucking loves hamming it up for the camera.
to the end. And after today's episode, you will too. So if you want to become the next front
How long
runner
is this?
for your
About 16
nation's
minutes?
elected
17
leader,
minutes? Okay.
Stay tuned, because I'll show you how in 4 easy steps with the help of our good friend, the Don. Now this comparison of an election to reality TV might seem absurd at first, but think about it. Both are contests with a cast of characters who have cameras rolling on them all the time. Just like the Channel E and shows like Entertainment.
Yeah, you know what? This is a very pertinent point of comparison, and in fact it's one of the biggest critiques I have with the American electoral cycle, especially first past the first past the post system suffer from this, is that the most high profile elections, particularly the combination of first past the post and a presidential system, is especially deadly. It fucking devolves things into a popularity contest where people are especially susceptible to narratives of fascism and the language of only I can fix it, because the president is the most visible public figure in all of politics. Even in parliamentary systems, when you still have a prime minister, there's still a lot less of that, like, head and shoulders above everybody else that a president has in a presidential system. It's part of the reason that, like, we've even seen people like Macron start to adopt the arrogance and outright, like, hatred for his political opponents and compatriots that Trump has organically, not because he's actually like that, but because he thinks it plays well, you know? And also because he's a liberal and genuinely hates the left. But, like, it is very easy for presidential candidates, especially in a first-past-the-post system, in a presidential system, to develop that kind of ego, because that kind of ego is essential to campaigning in that kind of system, that it cultivates that. Oh, was that not? Dang.
Cover the latest news.
Wait, what? You can just drive on that? I didn't know this.
Shows like the nightly news cover the election. It's all news and it's all entertainment, just with
infotainment.
Substance. most of the time. Trump is the one who seems to be most
No.
aware of the camera,
I
the one who
took
wants
that
this race to be as much
wrong.
a spectacle as it is a political discussion. And the Washington Post says he uses
Yeah,
Twitter far
get me
more
out of here, dude.
prolifically than the other candidates. So he's clearly playing the game in a more modern, media-savvy fashion
Yep.
than his opponents. In the first several months of his campaign, that reality TV style of self-promotion and
Unfortunate.
gamesmanship has been translating to voter support. And so, my fellow humanoids, here's the reality show blueprint that Trump has been using as his ultimate trump card. Sorry, that pun was pretty ham-handed. Step 1, create a clear persona.
Cock block
Reality
for now?
shows have
True.
big casts and a limited time to introduce viewers to them.
Shit, that's true. I didn't think of that. 2016 was a really big primary season, which means there were a lot of fucking people trying to get the presidential nomination from their political party on both sides of the two-party spectrum. And Trump stood head and shoulders above everybody else on the Republican side. Meanwhile, on the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton didn't win because people liked her. She won because the Democratic Party preferred her. There was a lot of institutional fuckery in why Bernie Sanders lost the Democratic Party primary and why Hillary Clinton won it. The Democratic Party's primaries are objectively less democratic than the Republican Party's primaries. It was literally, for the Republicans, it was literally a popularity contest, and Trump was able to win by being charismatic and standing above everybody else, being the funny haha guy that loved hamming it up for the camera and called Chris Christie fat. Meanwhile, on the Democratic side, because there's a lot of Byzantine proceduralist committees and meetings and caucuses and whatever that have to happen and that don't determine it by direct popular vote, the Democratic Party had a much easier time making it not a popularity contest. If the Democratic primary were a popularity contest, Bernie Sanders would have won, he would have beaten Trump in the general election, and America would be in an order of magnitude more favorable of a position now than it is today. But that's the difference. Is that, you know, those reality TV skills help you in the Republican Party way more than they do in the Democratic Party, you know? Because when you think about it, you know, you could, as much as I am loath to compare our favorite Jewish grandpa Bernie Sanders to fucking Donald Trump, right? They are, in a way, two sides of the same coin. Immensely popular and populist, willing to lambast the system for what it does wrong and how it cheats the American people, and hated, at least on an internal level, by their own political parties. The Republican Party really didn't like Trump before he took the reins. You know, a lot of them still don't like him. But that's not how politics works. But on the Democratic side, that is how politics works. If the leadership doesn't like you, you get snubbed. No. Right at the end, again, every single fucking time. Man, I'm not having a good one today.
So the simpler and more memorable
session, that
someone's
is.
persona is, the better. Pop culture philosopher Chuck Klosterman notes in his book...
He's probably about to say exactly what I said there.
Reality shows
Matt
like
Pat
The
is.
Real World, the granddaddy of reality TV, put a lot of effort into boiling down their participants into oversimplified archetypes, like the guy who plays the race card, or naive Southern girl. Think about some of reality TV's most iconic moments and characters. Johnny Fairplay from Survivor, who lied about his grandmother's death to stay an extra week on the show.
My grandmother's sitting home watching Jerry Springer right now.
Villain, Puck from The Real World, who wore a Nazi swastika shirt and refused to remove it when he was asked to by his Jewish housemate. Villain, Omarosa from Season 1 of The Apprentice, who wrongfully...
I'm not sure Sanders would have actually beaten Trump. Just seems like the media would have smeared the fuck out of him and legitimized a lot of what Trump said about socialists or Marxists or whatever. No, Bernie Sanders would have unambiguously beaten Trump in 2016. Even in a hostile media environment, the hostile media environment did very little to dent Bernie Sanders' popularity in the eyes of the American people. I know that Corbyn was also ousted in the United Kingdom, but that's because the United Kingdom, in a way, is actually more institutionalist than the United States. Popular opinion matters even less in the UK than it does in the US. You know, the media can do all that shit all it wants, but at the end of the day, it can't switch those votes from Bernie Sanders to Donald Trump. And way more people identify with Bernie Sanders and are motivated by him than are motivated by Donald Trump. You know, you can take a look at the kind of the map of people that donated money to Bernie Sanders in the 2020 presidential race. It was everybody. He outraised his Democratic companions in small dollar donations by like 5-1. There were like small pockets of candidates' hometown or home state, home region where people, you know, donated more to them than to other candidates. But then the entire rest of the United States, everywhere, was donating money to Bernie Sanders. People in America fucking love that guy because he is the leftist populist counter-narrative. Trump is transparently dishonest. He's just willing to go up there and act like he doesn't give a shit and just talk to the crowd like he's riffing. He's willing to go up there and riff and play the part of the populist. Bernie Sanders has all of that and more. There is no reality in which Donald Trump wins an election over Bernie Sanders. You know? Because Bernie Sanders has everything that makes Trump compelling and more. And because Bernie's not even a Democrat, he's not part of the Democratic Party. The Democrats would probably go with the attack line, he's not even a Democrat, which would backfire. People would only support him even more. Like, I can see already the kind of rhetoric that media would employ against Bernie Sanders. That's only going to make him more popular. No. How did I hit that? I swear I veered to the left. The place? Not bad.
He claimed that other contestants were racist.
I called her a baby. I told her to go in the corner and get her a pacifier in her blanket and go cry, which is what she always does.
Villain. Huh. It's funny how many of the first examples to come to mind are villains. Interesting. But if you really want evidence of this trend, look no further than shows like
Trump played the part of like a charismatic villain, I
where all
suppose.
teams come packaged with a one-line identifier. Dating, newlyweds, LGBT YouTubers. Wait, Tyler? Tyler, what are you doing on there? And Bernie Burns. Well, fine, I see that neither of you wanted to be my partner. That's okay. My feelings aren't hurt or anything. In all seriousness, though,
Matt Pat is gay? Confirmed? It's possible he was just riffing. I don't know the Matt Pat lore, but yeah. That's funny, so I choose to believe it.
Brains versus brawn versus beauty. It's like high school all over again. Jock, nerd, girl with loose morals. We as
Okay, so he's kind of taking the scenic route to describe what I just described, that it's all a popularity contest of charisma, character archetypes, and whatnot, and how well you can ham it up for the camera. And Trump was just good at hamming it up for the camera.
Humans just like to classify. It's more efficient. If I say, man, that guy is such a jock, you already know a lot about him without me having to
Yeah, he's trying to talk about politics while not being a politically oriented YouTuber, you know?
Explain his whole life history. And if you're picking one candidate in this year's presidential race who doesn't care about getting along with other people and fits into a few simple categories,
and that's fine. I don't doubt that like Matt Pat is a pretty progressive guy.
You know what kind of qualities Trump is using to identify himself with. He's a businessman, not a politician. He's rich. He's famous. He's successful. And he's not afraid to say whatever pops into his head. Depending on your perspective, he's either a bully or a no-nonsense outsider. But either way, Trump has labeled himself better than any other Republican in the race. Other candidates are more experienced.
Exactly what I was saying.
Put Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz into a box that easily? No. And that makes them a lot harder to follow because it requires more effort to know who they are and what they stand for. At this point, everyone knows who Donald Trump is and what he stands for. He has the clearest persona. Step 2, stick to a message.
A lot of the politicians that are a lot of the conventional, like, institutionalist politicians in America are absolute vacuums of charisma. No Riz. Like, El Riz, and then Trump got up there, had, like, I've got buckets full of Riz. You wouldn't even believe how much Riz I have. And rizzed up the American people on live TV, and rizzed up the, you know, the media producers and the anchors and all the, you know, the shareholders and literally everybody, so they couldn't take the camera off him. He rizzed his way to the presidency. It actually doesn't have anything to do with him lying. It has to do with him being, you know, being a slimy ass, like, sleazy Rizzlord. You know? I needed an item box. There we go. That's good.
The Biggest Loser, for instance, has 11 cameras running for 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's 616 hours of footage to
Yep.
make a single 42-minute long episode. So
He
if you
got-
have something to say, you better make it simple and you better make it quick. The #1 slot of pretty much any greatest reality TV moments of all time list tends to go
Just
to the
get me up
infamous
there.
snake and rat speech from the final episode of
There
season
we
1
go.
of Survivor. This was an electric moment of television. In it, truck driver Sue Hawk delivers a scathing speech to her former alliance mates, equating one to a snake and one to a rat.
But if I were to ever pass you along in life again, and you were laying there dying of thirst,
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
drink of water.
And encouraging the voters to follow the course
Ow.
of nature and
Crap.
let the snake eat the rat. It's so memorable because it's so simple and direct and honest. And as a result, it's endured for decades since it was first uttered. Or if you want an even better example of sticking to a message, look no further than Dr. Will Kirby from Big Brother. Never before has a clearer case of sociopathy been put to film as this man, the self-proclaimed puppet master.
No! What the fuck? How did that happen?
But what makes him so special? In the second season, he repeatedly told everyone to their face that he would lie to and betray them on the show. And he did! Week after week, his teammates would get backstabbed, and yet they continue.
A lot of this is just him talking about reality TV, which I will not have that much to comment on because I fucking hate reality TV and I don't watch it and I just don't care. But regardless, I think we've already established the broader point that he's making is something that I agree with and would also make just in slightly shorter format, which is that Trump is a reality TV villain. A lot of charisma, very memorable, endears himself to some, hated by a lot of others, and is really good at keeping the cameras on him and identifying himself as distinguished from everybody else. He was always going to win the primary because everybody else is a fucking Reese vacuum. Only thing is reality TV isn't real. Neither is the persona that people present in politics, with very, very rare exception. Trump on camera is basically the same as Trump off camera. Bernie Sanders on camera is pretty similar to Bernie Sanders off camera. There is a fucking world of difference between every other Democratic and Republican politician on camera and them off camera. And that's the important thing.
You to trust him until he eventually won the whole show. He won the show! But when I say that he stuck to his message, he really stuck to his message. When he returned in the All-Star season, he did it all again. Literally telling everyone in the house in the first few weeks how much he hated them.
So I had a heart-to-heart with myself. And I said, Will, what is the reason? Why are you having such a hard time playing? And this is the truth. I can't find an individual to hate because I hate you all.
And then went on to make the Final Four and ensure that his best friend would take home the grand prize. But it may well be that Donald Trump learned to simplify his message from one of the contestants on his very own show, the breakout star Omarosa. Lover, hater, or love to hate her, Omarosa always stayed direct and on message, including when she coined what has become one of the most famous mantras in reality TV.
I didn't come here to make friends. I said that from day one.
Omarosa wasn't secretive about doing whatever it would take to win, and she won a lot of fans over with that level of honesty. Suffice it to say that Donald Trump is probably not running for president to make friends.
No,
Just like
he definitely
Omarosa,
wasn't.
He's trying to win. And in case there's any doubt, he talks about winning constantly.
Winning. We have to win in Iowa. I'm going to win. I think I'm going to win Iowa.
Man, that guy toots his own horn a lot. You might say that he's trumpeting his success. Trumpeting. All right, that was the last Trump pun, I swear. When it comes to Trump's message, he keeps it simple and punchy. In fact, his message is so simple, it's comprised of words kids could see on Sesame Street. Tough, win, great. One syllable at a time.
That's true.
Much easier than that.
Trump being very punchy and very, like, limited with his lexicon actually does a lot to make him play well for the media cameras because it plays into the very short social attention span, socio-political attention span that Americans and just people in general have. And I might add to that as well, that this sort of plays into another thing that I was saying in a segment that I was going to upload, and I'm working on, about how the conventional neoliberal wisdom of politics is to shift yourself around to adopt the least offensive set of positions possible so as to not alienate everybody. But in so doing, you in effect alienate everybody because you have now made it clear that you don't actually stand for anything that would potentially make people disagree with you, right? In trying to, alter yourself like a mold of clay to be more likable, you appear as a snake in the grass. Trump, being boorish but consistent in like, I don't know, in his like flippancy, in his rhetoric, in being on message, was like able to cultivate that that consistency. You know, he, in alienating some people, cultivated an extremely strong and consistent base because it appeared as though he had real positions that he actually supported and was willing to represent, even when it meant a hostile media environment. You know, he ignored all of the consultants that were telling him, yeah, just fucking shift your positions around to find the least offensive side. Yeah, in trying to please everybody, you please nobody. In trying to be inoffensive to everybody, you offend everybody because they see you for the duplicitous snake that you are.
Kind of reminds you of hope and change a couple years ago, huh? And the easier it is for people to understand your message, the easier it is for them to get behind you. Step 3.
Hey, that's what that's what the MAGA poster used to look like? That's kind of wild.
Let's face it, our favorite reality TV personalities aren't always the most mentally or emotionally stable, but those kinds of people are also the producer's favorites, because you never know what they're gonna do next, and that makes for exciting television. We've already talked about a lot of other examples, but the one I'd like to focus on here is from one of America's finest artistic achievements, RuPaul's Drag Race. If you're unfamiliar with the show, RuPaul's Drag Race has nothing to do with souped-up cars. It features drag queens competing in
RuPaul's Drag Race has nothing to do with an actual drag race. It has to do with drag.
Competitions ranging from fashion to stand.
If you were familiar with the social, like, culture war political discourse the past couple of years, you've probably heard of RuPaul's Drag Race.
Comedy to lip syncing, and yeah, you can bet there's plenty of drama to go around.
Because you're doing a lot of talking. You've been everybody's BFF and kick. No, this is not RuPaul's best friend, Ray. Sherlock.
The best came in season 4 of Drag Race, which featured Chad Michaels, a Dead Ringer Cher impersonator.
I'm Cher, bitch.
Sharon Needles, who is equal parts
I didn't get an item.
And Latrice Royale.
Get those nuts away from my face.
But in a field of talented,
I don't know the
funny
lore.
drag queens, it felt like one in particular, Fifi O'Hara, was dominating all the airtime. How? By bringing the heat to anyone and everyone. Everyone hated her. She was the worst. I hated watching her. It was awful. But at the same time, I couldn't look away.
At least I am a showgirl, bitch. Go back to Party City where you belong.
Oh shit.
Similarly, nobody
Drum.
past year
I
has
don't
or
care.
created more beef than Donald Trump. He started so many fights, it's a surprise that Vince McMahon hasn't hired him on to be a professional wrestler.
Imagine if this show came on today. Yes, I could. It would get canceled. And I know this because there are media companies like Disney that are pulling episodes of shows that have progressive themes. Again, that like preemptive kowtowing bit. I'm gonna get up here, and then I'll continue. Alright, looking good. Pro wrestling.
The list of people Trump has bashed is lengthy. Fox News reporters, fellow Republicans like Ted Cruz and Jeb Bush, and of course, Hillary Clinton. Combine this with Trump calling Mexicans rapists and proposing a ban on allowing Muslims to enter the country, and Trump has been all over the news cycle since the moment he declared his candidacy. They say that any publicity is good publicity, and Trump is definitely winning that game. According to the Washington Post, from June through November, Donald Trump had more airtime on the news than the entire Democratic field combined.
That's crazy. It is actually insane how much news coverage Trump got and continues to get.
Advertising, it would be more surprising if Trump weren't in the lead. I mean, look, it must be effective. You don't see me making film theories about other candidates. Touche, Donald. Touche. And finally, step 4. Stay one step ahead of your opponents. In reality competition shows, the best players are the ones who can read their opponents and disguise their strategy. Let's take a look
He
at
generates
a
clips?
player
He does.
called the best
That's what I was saying
player
earlier. He's a
in
content
survival
machine for the
Never
news media
before
networks.
Has there been a clearer example of sociopathy
Yay,
put
first.
to film as this man, and that's including Dr. Will. Russell played the game 3 times. He was a finalist.
I feel like,
twice.
okay, I want to pause here because I've let some large sections of this go, like, playing without me saying anything. And I want to explain why I'm not really commenting on a lot of this. I'll reiterate this at the end, but a lot of this is reality TV, like Survivor, fucking RuPaul's Drag Race, the show, you know, Celebrity Apprentice, WWE, and I don't give a shit, and so I can't comment on it because I haven't seen and will not see any of that. But, you know, I just, like, I made my point very shortly, and so I guess I'm just trying to let that sit, because the point that MatPat is making, I fundamentally agree with, and he's still on that point, but I've already made it, you know? Yeah, it doesn't matter if the news agrees with Trump or not. It has his name in the title, and it's out there. They're talking about him. He's all that they're talking about. In fact, that's part of the problem with the news coverage, is that Trump is such an easy content farm that it's a very convenient distraction for them to only talk about him as though he's the ultimate villain and nothing else is wrong, when in reality, he's, as to borrow some language from my own parlance, he's just one grain on the beach. He's just one grain of sand. There's a whole ass beach you're not talking about. You know? And the beach is blighted and decaying and like whatever the hell else. And you're over here talking about this one grain of sand.
He wasn't a finalist. His own team lost on purpose because
you feel
they
me?
were so scared of him. What put Russell on everyone's watch list was that he broke the game, circumventing rules that everyone had just assumed were in place. Specifically, he found the hidden immunity idol, the item that protects people come voting time, before having any clues about where it was or the show telling them it was a thing that existed.
I think I just found the second hidden immunity item without a clue.
He convinced a player on the other team to give him an immunity idol on a season in which the show itself labeled Russell as a villain.
You don't hand the enemy the idol, especially when his name is Russell Hands. You don't do that.
He even resorted to psychological warfare against his own team by pouring out their water and burning their socks in an attempt to break their spirits. As Russell put it himself, if I can control how they feel, I can control how they think. This man, he is like a hero to me in only the way that like a super villain can be like someone that you admire, you know? Anyway, now look at Trump. Trump's opponent spent most of January drumming up as much support in Iowa as possible. Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio each held twice
doing the conventional wisdom thing.
But Trump played a wild card with a surprise endorsement from Sarah Palin. Palin's speech was mocked by a lot of people, but Trump was able to stay in the limelight ahead of his competitors through
I
one
just wanted to get
single
rid of that
event.
green shell.
Remember, this wasn't just any endorsement. This is Sarah Palin, a political figure who is very divisive. Someone who the sheer mention of her name drums up emotion with most voters. And that gets attention. Who cares about a bunch of stuffy events? Here's a news story I can really get headlines with. And then, 2 days before January's final debate, Trump just decided to hold his own rally instead of attending it. Like Russell, he's breaking the game, challenging rules that everyone just assumed were in place. I mean, who skips debates?
You earned it.
It's unheard of. This made headlines in its own right, but now think about his opponents. Trump had spent so...
That's true. Trump, he also skipped the 2023 Republican primary debate, which meant that, like, you know, he essentially deprived everybody else of ammunition to farm content off of him. Every other politician, so fucking bad in front of the camera by comparison, that, like, they all read as desperate because they can't help but talk about him even when he's not there. Even when he's not in the debate, he's winning the debate. Does that make sense? Again, just part of that, like, ability to be charismatic and ham it up for the camera that an institutionalist couldn't possibly have. You know?
So much time criticizing and insulting the people on that stage, you know that they were prepared to go on the offensive. But at the last minute, he pulls the rug out from under them and doesn't show, putting them off their balance and forcing them to rethink their approach.
Feels a bit like Pennywise. How so?
Well, it worked. Who are they going to attack now? The Washington Post notes the candidates switched more of their attacks to Ted Cruz in Trump's absence. Throughout his whole campaign, Donald Trump has differentiated himself by not following the beaten path, and in doing so has tried to control how his opponents feel when he attacks.
I meant to throw that forward.
Because, like Russell, if he can control how they feel, he can predict how they'll think, and more importantly, how they'll react. So congratulations, you now know the 4 steps to being a front runner in your presidential campaign.
He's a drama queen.
Donald Trump has a lot of things going for him. He has the clearest persona for everyone to understand. He keeps his messages simple and is able to dominate the conversation. He brings enough drama to keep voters' attention, and he can even
Because, like, the only way to get rid of him is not give him attention. Well, no, that's not the only way to get rid of him. Trump is now, like, you don't get rid of Trump. You get rid of the Republican Party. The way you get rid of Trump is you let him die, right? The way you get rid of, well, Trump in a political sense is you get rid of the fucking Republican Party. Otherwise, they're gonna weekend at Bernie's that shit. You know, they're gonna put his corpse up there and try to have his corpse hammered up for the camera if they can. You know? It's too late now, but in 2016... Yeah, in 2016, the way to do that would have been actually... It would have been one of two things. Number one, don't fucking content farm off of him like there's no tomorrow. Or, since the media would not have been able to help themselves, not even remotely, to run Bernie Sanders. The way that you defeat Trump in 2016, the way you get rid of him, you run Bernie Sanders against him. You know? And ultimately, in that environment, I actually think that the media would prefer Trump. And Bernie Sanders would still win. Because now, like, once the ruling class has all decided, or the owning class has all decided they prefer Trump, now everybody's going to be more sympathetic to Bernie. Because now Trump is the establishment pick, and Bernie's the outsider. You know, Bernie's the real populist. Trump is the puppet of the media establishment and the elites. You know? Does that make sense? Imagine the ruling class after a Bernie Sanders win. Oh, they would be fucking... They would be on their shit. They'd be putting out news piece after news piece. Bernie Sanders is anti-Semitic. He's a communist. He's a socialist. Bernie Sanders hates America. He's controversial. Here's his dangerous, controversial plan to bankrupt America. Like, the headlines would be fucking insane.
Are about to make.
So I feel like he's a bit like Pennywise. The way to beat him is to call him out as a big bully he is. No, in that way, he's actually not like Pennywise. Because Trump, the only thing that the media has been doing since Trump got elected is calling him out as a bully. That's the only thing. That was all the media coverage. You yourself said that it doesn't even matter if the media coverage agrees with him because they're giving him that media coverage. All the media does. This was the problem with the media. The only thing that they do is call Trump a bully. That's what everybody loves about him. Is that he'll just fucking talk shit about other politicians when they're right next to him. You know? He'll just go up on stage and say, yeah, Ted Cruz's dad is the, you know, Ted Cruz is the Zodiac killer, by the way, or some shit. You know? The reverse effect will occur with Bernie Sanders. Game theory is putting out. That, like, that's not the only way to get rid of Trump. That's the only way that Donald Trump succeeds. Is that you constantly look at him and call him a bully. Oh, pointing out.
So obviously, he has to be a lock to be the Republican nominee.
Yeah, in fact, game theory just spent the whole time pointing this out. That, like, the more of a bully somebody is, the more memorable they are, the more they're, like, a fan favorite. Even if it's in the sense that, you know, people love to hate them. You know? That's exactly what the media and the liberals did in 2016 and 2024, and it's why both times they lost. You know?
Well, not necessarily. Because while
Oh,
all these steps are
okay.
critical to making reality TV stars, they don't necessarily create reality TV winners. Omarosa, Fifi O'Hara, and Russell Hantz got relatively famous, but they all lost. Puck was the most famous person on The Real World San Francisco, but he was evicted from the house midway through the season because everyone hated him. And this isn't even a show where evictions are a thing that exists. They're just supposed to live together. You're not voting people out. Of everyone that we talked about, Dr. Will is the only winner. And that's because, man, this guy is charming. He is so awful, but he is so charming.
Do you think it's easy being this good looking?
You're not calling bully standing up to him? I don't know.
Easy.
Either way. Standing up, yeah, there we go. Standing up to him would have been the way to do that. Calling him a bully is not. Calling somebody a bully is not standing up to them. Standing up to Trump would have been to stand up to the ruling class, to the owning class. But the thing is, everybody else in the media, they're birds of a feather with Trump, baby. They're all rich. They're not going to stand up to one of their own. Are you kidding me? They have the same interests. Their only problem with Trump was that, yeah, he's a little mean. That's it. And, you know, because Trump is in politics, this is the thing that differentiates politics from reality TV. There is no standing up to a politician. You stand up to their ideology, to their coalition, to their party. That is what you do. But the news media is part of that broad coalition of business interests. They can't stand up to Donald Trump, and they don't want to, because they are part of that same group with him. They treated him as an outsider, because if they recognized him as an insider, they would be lobbing critique at themselves, right? They're like painted themselves into a corner that way. Media being explicitly on the side of Trump would help Bernie because the news would be constantly about him and his platform would be put out there. Yes, that's right.
Survivor contestant who emerges as an early leader.
And that's a significant part of why I believe Bernie would have beaten Trump, is because once the news media coalesces behind Trump with somebody who is overtly hostile to the interests of the owning class, an actual outsider populist, now they have control over the populism, and Trump is the insider,
Support, gotten a lot of airtime, but now his tribe is trying to bring him down before it's too late. In this case, the tribe is the Republican establishment, and the endorsements made by Republican and members of Congress are like votes.
Oh wow, Haley?
Votes in the tribal council. The endorsements in favor of Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, and Jeb Bush continue to climb, while endorsements for Donald Trump are few and far between.
Yeah, exactly. Real Cryoraptor. That's exactly what would happen. Bernie is a communist. He wants to bankrupt America by raising the minimum wage to $20 and guaranteeing a worker's right to organize and, force people to join unions. And people see that and like, well, shit, I want higher wages and to join a union. And enough people are skeptical of powerful institutions on principle that any negative media coverage of Bernie Sanders, like blatantly negative partisan coverage of Bernie Sanders by news media, will have the opposite effect. That's the kind of thing that disillusionment does. It turns people against institutions, so that when institutions express a viewpoint, people are naturally inclined to reject it.
Republican leaders worry that this guy's an embarrassment, that they won't be able to get Trump to compromise, that he's not the kind of guy who'll sit down to dinner and meet you halfway, like some sort of Lady and the Trump. Sorry, honest talk, I have a serious pun problem. Need like some sort of
That's
pun
true.
Addicts
He's addicted.
Patrick, and I'm a pun addict. Anyhow, the
he's addicted to puns.
After leading the polls for most of the few months leading up to the Iowa caucus, he finished second, receiving well below the percentage of the vote he was projected to get.
Holy
Trump's
shit.
Not done
Give me that
fighting
mushroom.
yet. Like I said, he won the New Hampshire primary, but there's definitely blood in the water. If the parallels
Son of
between
a...
Trump and
Everybody has it in for me this time, I swear.
He might be able to outwit his opponents in debates and outplay them in the media game, but he probably won't outlast them. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory.
Huh.
And cut.
Interesting.
Mr. Trump, quick question. What would you say to someone who...
Okay. There's one last bit that I wanted to look at there that he said at the end. I didn't quite catch it, and then I'll do some final analysis of that, and then wrap up the stream. Because I know I didn't say a whole lot for a decent chunk of that. Alright, I'm gonna chain this. Alright. Okay.
Hey, it's an outplayed. Reality stars are any indication, he might be able to outwit his opponents in
I forgot
debates
Matt
and
said Trump was gonna
outplay them
lose.
in the media
Interesting.
game, but he probably won't outlast them. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut.
Okay. You know what's interesting? Yeah, Gotron. His prediction that Trump would lose the election is oddly dissonant with everything that he described. All of the systemic biases towards charismatic outsiders that he outlined in this video paint a picture exactly contradictory to what he predicts at the end, that he might not outlast his political opponents. Now, funnily enough, I think this prediction is more appropriate for 2016 than 2024 or even 2020, because remember, 2020 was an exceptional year because of the pandemic. But in 2016, Trump lost the popular vote to Hillary Clinton. He only won that election because of the Electoral College. Hillary Clinton would have won the election if it was like a national popular vote thing, right? But again, there's that weird contradiction. So I think that you should be more willing to go off of the initial like 16 minutes of this video rather than the bit at the end, because Trump is all of those things. This is really pertinent analysis by MatPat, is that the reason that Trump is able to have such power in the media cycle is because he is a charismatic, villainous outsider who loves hamming it up for the camera. People are going to love you for that, even if that generates controversy. What that means is that you have appeal to some people. Instead of being a, like unidentifiable gray glob of politician who appeals to nobody and somewhat offends everybody by having no real identity or values, you could be extremely polarizing because there are things that you ostensibly stand for, and you could have a very dedicated following and sympathetic group of people who are willing to support you when it comes down to it. You know, because Trump seemed to have actual opinions on things, incoherent as they were, people loved him for that. And people hated him for that. But even, you know, among the people who hated him, common between both of those groups, they couldn't shut up about him. And make no mistake, the news media was on that hate, that love train, that love to hate train. Trump made the news media a unfathomably large amount of money because he generates clicks. And that's exactly like what helped Trump win, is because the media focused on him being mean and boorish and an outsider, while they couldn't actually attack any of these substantive, like any of the actual politics he was espousing, because they, the ruling class, ultimately share the same basic politics. And that's why Trump won. He had all of the biases in the media climate going for him. Like, a lot of things worked in his favor, mostly having to do with the fact that he was charismatic and willing to just riff with the audience and not act like the American people are subhuman. You know? Like, it's actually unreal how much hatred the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton had for their own base. Wouldn't it be funny if MatPat was a liberal? I think he is a liberal. And I don't mean that in the most derogatory sense possible. You know, this is not me condemning you to liberalism, right? Like, this is not your death sentence, right? This is me saying I think MatPat is actually a very critically aware and capable individual. You know, very strong sense of critical thought. He's able to engage with a materialist framework. But I think there are, like, a lot of ways in which, since he is not a typically political channel or individual, at least that I know of, he is in some ways an embodiment of the passive absorption of liberal ideology, where he still succumbs to some biases that he is not aware of that a liberal system would instill in people. You know? Which is why I think you get that dissonance, where at the end he predicts Trump may not outlast his opponent, but he is capable of outwitting and outplaying them. Does that make sense? So, you know, in short, right? Another W from MatPat. I didn't know this video existed. You know, I didn't realize that MatPat was analyzing, you know, Trump's prospects for the 2016 election back in the day. Plus 22 for 6? I'll take that. Bugcatcher, welcome to chat. MatPat is a centrist neolib agenda. I don't think he is, I'll be real. Good shit post, thank you, very cool. But I don't think he is. I think he's just, you know, I think if he had to make a video about subjects relating to neoliberalism and centrism, I think he would very firmly land on the leftward side of the fence there, right? I don't think, like, if he did some research into that, he wouldn't be that kind of person. Yeah, the only reason I think he might come off that way is because he probably just hasn't done research on it. He's a smart dude. You know? And, in fact, if you've seen my other video reacting to him talking about how YouTube broke your brain, he talks about social alienation. He talks about the decaying of community infrastructure that enables people to find purpose in life. A lot of that is intrinsically tied to the socioeconomics of localities and regions all across the United States. A lot of the places where he describes this social alienation rising and nationalism rising as a way to have some kind of synthetic alternative to, I don't know, TV culture, which is now gone. The way that he talks about that makes it very clear that he's, you know, at least tangentially touching on the fact that neoliberalism has fucking decayed the social landscape to the point that people are desperate, you know? A lot of the things that he talks about that are responsible for creating this are neoliberalism. He is not as zoomed out and as directly political as a commentator such as myself or Hassan or Vosh, but in so many words, that video about YouTube breaking your brain is a critique of neoliberalism. It is a critique of the subscription-based model and of something that prioritizes the absolute maximizing of profit at the expense of social utility. That's in effect what that is, you know? He might not even realize it, but he's not a neoliberal. Cool video. Anyways. Damn, you come up off as smart. I'm a little caught off guard. It's like having a podcast board in my brain. Well, I'm glad I pleasantly surprised somebody. You know, you don't usually expect intelligence from a Twitch stream. I'm glad that you're pleasantly surprised there. And welcome to the stream. Unfortunately, I'm welcoming you right at the very end because I usually only stream for about 2 hours anyway, and I just did that React video. You can probably expect to see that on YouTube. Hopefully people are able to draw a consistent through line. Hopefully I conveyed a consistent through line in reacting to that. Yes, Gotron, this will be a segment. Right-wingers don't know Matt Pat? Really? That's interesting. I guess I find myself now being passively curious about these sort of political demographics of people that watch Matt Pat. I don't know if he has any conservatives in his audience. But yeah, if I wanted to recap that, another based W from Matt Pat. I know I said that already, but yeah, the scenic route, like I said, but very correct encapsulation of what gained Trump so much media attention in the 2016 election cycle. And I think, despite the little segment at the end, I think that was a strong prediction of Trump at least enjoying some degree of political success. Politics is turbulent, predictions are hard, and they can be inconsistent. But yeah, I guess Matt Pat did kind of predict the rise of Donald Trump, both in 2016 and now we saw actually the same thing in 2024. He was talking about the ability of Trump to riff and his characteristics of being mean and a bully a la reality TV villain and how the media couldn't shut the fuck up about him. And all of that applied to the 2024 campaign as well. And it helped Donald Trump that his opponent was so comparatively uncharismatic and not even likable as a villain, just unlikable. They didn't want anything to do with them. They didn't want to talk about them. They didn't want to look at them. It's that kind of unlikable. Trump is a magnet for attention. He's charismatic. That was true in 2016. It was true in the 2024 election cycle. Even though he ran like a pretty shit campaign, the media still couldn't shut up about him. And the Democrats still, the best that the Democrats and media outlets could come up with is he's mean and a bully, because at the end of the day, Trump is of the same ilk of the establishment. Like he is a billionaire. He markets himself as an outsider, and it's convenient for people to label him as such, but ultimately they can't actually critique him or meaningfully oppose him, because to do so would be to oppose their own interests on the part of the news media as a set of privately owned institutions. Anyways, that's all for me. Future me, cut the segment there. I'm gonna find somebody to raid now. Hope you guys like Azan. Alright. Leftist audio moment. I accidentally played the Hassan stream audio for like 2 seconds. Alright. Raid Hassan Abi. Very true. Many such cases. Alright. I'll see you guys soon. I might only be able to stream one or two more, like one more time this week, depending, but I should be able to stream again. I'll see you soon.